And you're welcome. It's still a live coverage of events that are happening outside as we, bring to you all the events that have been happening since the start of the End Bad Governance protests here in Nigeria. My name is Mazino, and together with Judith Atibi, we'll be taking over the pre-evening up until the evening stands here on News Central to give you all the details about what's happening out there, along with guests that we have in studio and outside as well. So do stay tuned, because this is where you get all the information that you need just in case you're indoors and watching television. Judith, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon to you, Mazino. And also good afternoon to our viewers. As he said, it's going to be very in-depth analysis as well. We'll be patching you over to our reporters, our correspondents who are everywhere in Nigeria covering the protests as they unfold in all of the geopolitical zones in Nigeria. They'll also be speaking to protesters and also giving you blow-by-blow events as they happen live on the protest ground. And also right here in the studio as well, we'll be having analysts and very important personnel who will be voicing their opinion about the protests and everything in between. And to that effect, let me introduce our guest for this hour. And to my right, I have with me Mr. Okechukwu Nwaguma. He's the Executive Director, Rule of Law and Accountability Advocacy Center, RULAC. To my left is Gbadigbo Rhodes Vivo, former gubernatorial candidate for Lagos State for the Labour Party and also member of the Labour Party. Gentlemen, you're welcome to the program.
Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Good to have you here.
Good to have you
Judith,
here.
do you want to go ladies first, or should I?
As usual, ladies first.
Oh, I'm not the lady, though. But thank you very much.
Ladies first, as usual.
Please go ahead.
I want to first of all say thank you, gentlemen, for joining us today. And the demands we've seen day two of the protest scattered across the continent, rather scattered across the country, Lagos State, Abuja. It's been different responses so far from the government, different responses so far, especially from the security forces and the agencies. What we've also seen as well from yesterday and even going into today is the response from the security forces in certain parts of the country. I want to start with your take so far on how these responses have been, especially from the security agencies to the protesters. And let me start with you, Mr. Rhodes Vivo.
I have to commend Lagosians. It's been largely very peaceful, as it always typically is, in terms of Lagosians are not destructive people. They don't go out to try and be destroying things. Generally, violence is always instigated or started from government or their forces. So, for instance, you look at the NSAR situation. The first attempt at violence was busloads of thugs with weapons coming to attack peaceful protesters, and then the army was rolled out. So you see a situation where people are just coming out to voice their grievances, to protest the situation that they've been dealing with, and to also show that they can do this peacefully. And by and large, the police have also been there cooperating in most instances, at least in Lagos State. So I'm glad that there's not been any need for violence or any sort of violence outbreak in Lagos State.
Thank you so much for your submission. Let me start with you as well. What's your take so far from the response from the security agencies?
Well, I want to start, from where my brother just, and by the way, let me express how excited I am sharing the studio with my brother, the man who ought to be the governor of Lagos State, So I want to join him to commend, salute the courage of Nigerians everywhere for having the courage, the boldness to come out in defiance of the threats, the intimidation, and the fears created by government in a bid to, stop them from coming out to peacefully express their fundamental rights to freedom of assembly and expression. What you find is that, and it does appear to me that government does not seem to be learning lessons. A lot of things that we witnessed during NSAS repeated themselves. Government sponsoring thugs with a bid to infiltrate, to counter the protests and to discredit the protests and the organizers.
Mr. Okechukwu, I'm going to pause you there because we're getting information that we have currently will be joining our live feed now, where Christopher Musa, Chief of Defense Staff, has just come out of a closed-door meeting and will be addressing the press. So let's take that video, and when we come back, we'll get back to your answer. Thank you very much, sir.
Nigeria. Just to give an update as to the situation that is ongoing, we're all aware of what happened yesterday. It's the government have actually shown its own commitment by upholding its promise to allow people to associate freely without any rancor. But I'm sure everyone is disappointed with the outcome. Clearly, the security forces have done extremely very well. I'm very happy to mention what especially the Nigerian police force, have shown a lot of professionalism, including where members of the armed forces had to step in. But you can see that we have remained very professional in our conduct and will continue to do that, as long as the citizens also understand that there's a difference between peace and criminality. What we saw yesterday was, at the beginning, some semblance of a very peaceful demonstration, but which was quickly taken over by a bunch of criminals that don't mean us well. And if you remember, we have warned that there are individuals that are ready to cause mayhem once this starts. And so we want to appeal to Nigerians to understand that the federal government is doing the best it can for the country. The federal government, the present regime, is just there for less than 1 year, and it is not possible for them to have solved every financial, economic, security situation within 1 year. But I'm sure everybody, if we're truthful to ourselves, efforts have been made and have continued to be made. We have seen policies that have been made to address the economic situation on the ground, including security situation. Things are improving. We are not where we are, but I can assure you we're heading there. And if we have the support of everyone together, we can bring total peace and the economy will pick up. Just some few days I was in the Niger Delta to also ensure that our production, oil production, increases immediately so that we can have enough funds to fund our economy. So I want to call on all Nigerians to understand with the government. If you have grievances, which I know people have, there are a lot of challenges here and there, and it's not only in Nigeria alone. Everywhere in the world is facing one economic or security crisis or the other. And so it's important to understand that we're not alone. But what we can do is not to allow criminals, individuals that have lost out, to take advantage of this to destroy our country. We should realize that this destruction we're doing, monies have to be used. Monies for development will have to be used to repair this thing so that we can move forward. And so instead of doing that, we should come together, make sure nothing is destroyed. The statement, the message has already been passed to the federal government, the state government, and the local government. The local governments are already in place. The president has already directed through the Supreme Court for the local governments to have direct funding from the federal government that will also assist. Please, Nigerians should look up to their local governments, their state governors. The federal government is doing its best. Everybody is putting hands on deck. We know we are challenged as a nation, but we know we will overcome, working together as Nigerians. I want to appeal once again for the support of all Nigerians to the federal government, to the state government, and to the local governments. Let us avoid anything that will bring mayhem within our communities. Yesterday, we have seen the level of destruction that has been carried out just yesterday. And so you can imagine if this continues for so long. The armed forces and the entire military security agencies will not stand by and see that to continue. So we want to warn those that are recalcitrant, those that don't want to listen, that will not fold our hands and see our country to be destroyed. We will take action, and the action we'll take it professionally. Anyone that is caught will be taken to the courts to be dealt with. So once again, I want to thank you for coming, especially members of the media. And again, for the media, I want to also appeal. I noticed throughout yesterday, all the stations were hooked up to the occasion. This is not an election thing. Don't give them that coverage for them to feel, because there are some of them are looking for just moments of, being on the screen. Together, I can assure you we are going to win, and we are winning, and at least from today we have seen the level that it has really gone down. Most state governors that decide to declare a state of emergency have called it off, and working together as Nigerians for Nigeria will succeed. Yeah.
Before my Ismail report for before the protest, based on our interface with the defense companies, I believe a lot of intelligence were gathered and analyzed.
Yeah.
Now I want to know, were the security agents overwhelmed, or were they directed the possible outcome of protesting?
Well, you know, the security agencies cannot be everywhere, and you can just make your predictions to such an extent. The entire area is large. You know, Nigeria with about 900 and almost 1 million square kilometers. It's not going to be easy to secure the entire area. But I think yesterday, the security forces actually stood up to their responsibilities, and that's why you see that it is measured. And it's important for them to understand that working together as a team is what we require. The security forces cannot do it alone. We need all Nigerians to put hands together to make sure we succeed. And we stop these criminals from taking advantage. I mean, yesterday we saw some people breaking down houses, stealing windows, doors. I mean, it was just crazy yesterday. And we don't want that to happen again.
So my name is Sifon and I work with TVC News.
Okay.
Mine is still in line with what my colleague has asked earlier. Going back before this incident actually happened, the course of gathering intelligence and warning Nigerians, this was going to happen. I would like to know, what did the security agencies and the office of the CDS do to prevent criminals from having a field day, which we saw being displayed in several quarters yesterday?
But you see, that is the challenge of when you are dealing with non-state actors. You cannot, it has to do with the human mind. Nobody can predict the human mind. Efforts were made before now. We have held several meetings. The Office of the National Security Advisor had interfaced with almost all the stakeholders in this aspect on the need for us to maintain peace. And most of them have agreed that there was going to be peace. But then, like I said, you cannot read the minds of people. There are a bunch of people who believe that it is only through this medium that they will be able to loot, steal, and destroy. And that's what they tried to do yesterday. But we have arrested most of them that have actually been able to break into places to steal, and they will be prosecuted accordingly.
So my name is Okiki Adeniran.
Yes.
I work for Channels Television.
Okay, lucky.
This is day 2 of the protest.
Yes.
So the protesters continue. Will you be ordering or asking the military to give support to the police?
No, like I said, we are supporting the police all through, but we are just on standby. The police is doing a good job. They're handling the situation for now. And unless if it breaks beyond what they can handle, then the military will step in. And the military is on standby, and we're watching day and night.
So good afternoon, sir.
Yes.
My name is Mazino, Celebrate Television. So my question is closely tied to his. I'm sure you must have noticed that Abuja has suddenly gone quiet.
Yeah.
People are afraid for their lives, and we have Monday coming on. Can we guarantee the safety of people who have businesses or civil servants coming into town on Monday for their normal activity?
I can assure you that is being done. We're taking steps on that. We are going also behind to ensure that we also identify all those ones that are involved. There are individuals that are actually sponsoring them, pushing them to do these things. We're going after them. But the truth I can tell Nigerians is that everybody should be calm. Everybody should be open-minded in what's going on. Give us information as quickly as possible. I want to appreciate those that have been doing that. And that has greatly assisted us in doing what we're doing.
Okay, my name is Amadin Uisa.
Yes.
News Center Television. Now, in the area of information, because some of us were on the streets yesterday.
Yeah.
And in as much as we appreciated the restraint by security agencies, there were some places where we covered, we can clearly say that those were not protests.
Yeah.
Those were miscreants unleashing.
Definitely.
Now, how can Nigerians reach out to the military in case they are in such areas and they want to collaborate with security agencies to alert security agencies that your presence is needed at so and so place?
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm sure you have the phone number. Every week we have dialogue with the media during our briefing. So you have direct link with our media organizations. You have their contacts. If there's anything, let us know. We're going to make some, all after this, we're going to make some phone numbers open to the public. Once you see anything, please don't hesitate to report immediately. It's very important. Good afternoon. Yes. Okay.
So I cannot confirm the authenticity of this letter that I'm seeing, but there's a letter that says that due to the activities of criminals which happened, a lot of that happened yesterday, that there may be another protest coming up October 1st. How would you react to this? Well,
I think those are just speculators. There are some individuals, like I said, there are some people who just want some moments of fame, and that's what they are trying to do, just to psych up and make sure that there's general fear within the public. Please, Nigerians should disregard that. We are making every effort to ensure that everywhere is secured. I can show you that.
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Ferdinand Bureau from the Rights News.
Okay.
And in some quarters yesterday, there's some allegations that security operatives used live cartridges on civilians, and perhaps that must have spawned the riots in some places.
No, I think you guys were all on screen all 24/7. So if such a thing had happened, I've seen some injuries, and we're investigating to find out actually what happened. But I know that a lot of restraint was really exercised yesterday. A lot of tear gas, non-lethal aspects were happening. I've seen a lot of people that were injured. Some were mentioned, but we're investigating that to see entirely what happened. Like I said, when situations like this happen, some people take advantage of them, doing one thing or the other to make it look as if it is security agencies that are doing that. But we're taking measures on that. That I can show you. Thank you. All right. Thank you very much. So thank you very much.
Live feed there from the Chief of Defense Staff, Mr. Christopher Musa, as he addressed the press and the media on the current end bad governance protests that are currently rocking the entire nation, Nigeria, here. Thank you very much for sticking with us. We still have our guests in the studio. And from before we left, Judith, we were asking Mr. Okiki a few interesting questions. My apologies that we had to break you there, but we'll get back to that one, if you will.
Well, very interesting comments that the General Christopher Musa, OFR, of the who is the Chief of Defense Staff of Nigeria. He made a number of comments, and very interesting, right? To start with, he said that, of course, they're going to be on ground to make sure that this doesn't spiral into chaos and anarchy. He also said, he made some comments about the media, saying that he noticed how every television station gave full coverage and said not to give full coverage, as we did yesterday, because that would sort of give the protesters more leeway. He also did say that if and when the protest turns into chaos, that they would have to react according to the law. Now, I want to get both gentlemen's reaction to this, right? We've seen him make the statements about the protesters and the security outfit and what is their right. He also said, he made something which is, I'm going to paraphrase that, which simply is what I've been hearing, this narrative I've been hearing the entirety before the election started. Your one right stop when the other ones begins, and that's pretty much just ties up his speech. But gentlemen, what do you make of the General's statement today? And I'm going to start with you, Keju, because I caught you earlier on.
Well, I mean, the narrative hasn't changed. You know, government is still grandstanding, and I hear him say the media shouldn't be, you know, publicizing what is going on. I don't know what they have in their skeleton that they don't want the public to see, because it is the duty of the media to hold the government accountable and to give information, to receive and give information. So unless there is something else that they don't want to. But talking about who is sponsoring who, if there's anybody sponsoring anything here, it is government that is sponsoring people to counter peaceful protests. Look at what happened in Abuja. At the stadium, you saw truckloads of people who were brought in by government simply to counter the protest. And some of them were interviewed. I had some of them interviewed, and one said they didn't know they gave him certain amount of money. The other one said, if I knew I was going to be brought here to protest against this protest, they wouldn't have come, which means clearly that government, rather than focusing on addressing the genuine concerns of the people, are focused on how to counter the protest, on how to discredit this protest. And if there is any incident, a lot of the incidents we see, unfortunate incidents, were caused by the responses of the security agencies. In most situations where they used tear gas, they were unwarranted. I mean, you say people should restrict themselves to the stadium, and then on citing the government-sponsored protesters, they decided to move away, and then you started to tear gas them in order to disperse them. in the outskirts of Abuja, where there were incidents, it was because people were not allowed because of the security barricade. So I think that the focus that government should, the focus we want to see is how to address the genuine concerns, the economic hardship, the widespread suffering that people are complaining about. And unless this happens, government is the one escalating these things. Unless if they continue along the line that they are going, things will continue to escalate rather than de-escalate.
Let me also come to you, Mr. Rhodes Vivo. When he also said something of to the line of if the media should not give as much coverage as they have given in the last 24 hours and over. You should not give much leeway to them and should let them just let them protest. Almost like to say, continue, you tire. What do you say to this?
I think, well, first, he spoke a lot about the narrative that they're trying to create. He was talking about the economy and he was talking about policies of the government. I didn't expect him to be doing that. His focus should have been on security, which most of what he said was. But it goes back to this narrative that they've tried to create, which is that people that were not happy with the way the elections went are trying to stage a revolt against the present government, without fully addressing the issues that people have been putting on the table. Very real issues. These are not subjective issues. These are issues that if you go to the market, you feel it. You know the price of putting fuel in your car. You know the price of paying for transport to move around. You know the price of food in the market. This is something that connects everybody. And they gave enough notice to the government that we're going to have a protest. Up till today, the president has not found it worthy to talk to his people. Over a month, you had notice. The president has not found it, has not found any time to address his people, to address these issues. I say that they could have looked at what happened in Kenya and, cut through all the protests and see how the government in Kenya had to now address and deal with issues, declarations that they had to make. You have a situation where people are going through suffering that's unprecedented. And they are still hearing that the government is spending about 21 billion on a house for the vice president and his family. They're still hearing that in the midst of all this suffering, the president wants to buy another private jet.
Or he has bought.
Or he has bought a private jet. Yeah. We are having conversations about whether they're buying a yacht or not. And it just shows how out of touch the leadership of this country is. And this is what is causing this protest. And until these things are addressed, until the government shows empathy, as opposed to, look at the kind of thing that someone like the president of the Senate president said, where he's going to eat, let them go and protest. Or what Dapo Abiodun said yesterday, where he said Nigerians are sore losers. It completely just tries to ridicule the realities that Nigerians are facing on a daily basis. And without addressing these issues, it's only going to keep compounding and getting worse.
Mr. Vivo, I really wanted to come to you and talk about or ask regarding specific reforms, being a former governorship candidate yourself, regarding the reforms that could have been put in place to steer us away from where we are now. But I'll come back to you on that one. But currently, we have our correspondents at Ojota. We have Igbalani Omoni and also Mr. Bennett Akede. They will be getting back to us now, telling us exactly what the state of things are like in Ojota. Ni, if you're there, if you can hear me, please would like to know exactly what the state of things are at Ojota currently. Hello, Ni. Yes, Ni. Can you hear us, Ni? I think Ni might not be able to hear us. Perhaps maybe Bennett Akede would be able to respond to us. If Bennett is online now, Bennett, are you there, please? Nah, doesn't seem so.
Seem to be losing them there.
We'll definitely make sure that we get back to them and they give us their report on what the state of things are. Reforms. We find ourselves in a place where, hey, we saw this coming like a year ago. Pull out fuel subsidy, change policies here and there. Many people think that these are antisocial policies. However, the government insists that this would have brought us back on track. It might take a little time, and they've been asking for time from the populace. Give us a bit of time. 1 year is not enough, they say. How would you, or what would you suggest, what kind of reforms or policies could have been put in place that we don't find ourselves here now where we find ourselves?
Well, first of all, the government came in with a major credibility problem. The votes that brought this president in is one of the lowest margins in Nigerian history. So if I was in his position, the first thing I'd have been doing is trying to build credibility with the people of Nigeria. Now, unfortunately, with all the propaganda, you know, Maersk has invested so much money here, then Maersk says they don't know anything about it, or conversation about the United Arab Emirates, Dubai, so many proclamations by the government that just turned out to be false has affected a lot of credibility and trust that people have. Now, trust is a very important thing because trust directly impacts on your currency. A people looking at the people that are in charge of their country and having faith in them literally translates to whether they believe they should invest in that country. Literally translates to whether they should hire more staff, right? Or whether they should run out of the country, whether they should japa. Now, in selling all their things and changing that money, right? All of these things are affecting your currency. They're affecting the belief in your currency. So the government has a credibility problem that they must solve desperately. That's one side. The other thing is there must be well thought out holistic policies. You cannot just, the policy inconsistency is terrible. It does not allow people to plan properly. And you have a situation where subsidy was just announced and removed without seeing any policies put in place to cushion the effect of that subsidy removal. Because the idea is you remove subsidy, the government has a lot more money that they can use for social interventions, they can invest in bettering the lives of the people.
The government would argue that subsidy was already removed, that there was no place for subsidy in the budget that was presented from before they took office.
Yes.
That's one. There are plenty of attempts to make Nigeria viable or attractive to foreigners. The president came in with plenty of visits to outside of the country, plenty of visits to foreign interests, in quote, that might be interested in Nigeria. What happened to those? Was there any breakdown, do you think, in those conversations? That's on one side. Was there a problem with the way subsidy removal was announced? Was it grandstanding to just say, oh, that's it, we no longer have subsidy? Or, like you say, perhaps maybe it could have been a softer approach where there are other factors that have been put in place to help cushion the effect?
Okay, so like I said, we need a well thought out approach and we need policy consistency and truth. Today, some people will tell you that subsidy is still being paid in some shape or form, right? There's conversation about that. So for me, it's a well thought out approach that shows at the local government level how people are going to be cushioned, whether it is palliatives that they started to do initially or whether it's social intervention at the local government and ward levels to be able to cushion this. Also, investing significantly in ensuring that food inflation is minimized. And this comes with logistics costs, subsidizing logistics and getting food into urban centers, right? These are things that can potentially be done to reduce the cost of food. And targeting policies that affect the common man on a daily basis. And then you talked about the traveling around and meeting people and trying to engage with governments and all of that. Well, unfortunately, you start to see, again, you go to Dubai, say that investments are coming in or they're going to remove visa restrictions, and then the government, the other government denounces that. Or Maersk says that they are going to invest in Nigeria, then Maersk says they are unaware of this. None of these things build trust. And you know, if you put the right policies in place in your country, you don't need to be gallivanting for people to come in. People will come in.
Now here's where I'm going. The Labour Party also said that they would have removed subsidy anyway.
Yes.
How could they have done it any better that we don't arrive here?
Yes. So for us, the focus would have been on blocking loopholes. I assure you, under a Labour Party, you'd have never heard 21 billion naira is going to be spent on the deputy, on the Vice President's house. you'll never have heard about buying fleets of cars that were manufactured internationally when you understand the situation of you need to move from consumption to production in your country. And you take all that wealth and allow for capital flight to happen. All the monies that were spent to pay for cars for the Senate, for the House of Rep, all of this. See, sometimes it's about sending the right signals to the people of Nigeria, showing that you have empathy and understand what they are going through, cutting down on profligate spending, right? The optics that this government is doing is one that shows that it's out of touch. You are enjoying and moving in the excess of our commonwealth, while the people keep shouting that they're hungry, they're hungry, they're hungry, and there is no meeting in the middle to show we are in this together. And that is why I believe this has blown up the way it has.
Thank you, Mr. Vivo.
In the meantime, we said we're going to bring you a report there. We have Bennett Akede, who is on standby at Ojota, the park right there. He is at Ojota, where the protesters are at and have continued protesting since yesterday. Bennett, can you hear me?
Well, I told the protesters, reminding them about where we are coming from, reminding them of what it took us to even enter the streets yesterday to exercise our fundamental human rights, and therefore advising on why we need to remain peaceful despite provocation. I also use the opportunity to talk about some of the threats that we have been getting, because it's been difficult this morning to even converge. The police have been doing a bit of work trying to ensure that we are protected, but we think that more has to be done, because this afternoon there were a lot of attempts by thugs clearly affiliated to the government and the ruling party, to invade us and attack us, and the police did not do so much about that. And we think that the police need to do more, because our lives are in their hands. And this is why it is important to use this opportunity to call the attention of the CP to these developments, and to asking that we need more than assurances. We need the Commissioner of Police to direct his men to actually go after those people who are sending these talks against us. These are known faces. These are people affiliated to the Road Transport Union and the APC in Lagos State. They are people whose names are known. We think that the CP needs to do more by going after them. Then it was also an occasion to also talk about the next test for tomorrow. By tomorrow, we are reassembling here by 7 a.m. on the dot. So we are urging all Lagosians, all workers, all youths, all oppressed masses to come out and march tomorrow in their thousands. We cannot submit our right to protest. Protest is a fundamental human right. We are going to exercise it in our thousands tomorrow. And we want to urge the police to call those who are threatening us to order. We don't want any violence. We don't want anybody to lose their lives. But we are not going to submit our rights to peacefully assemble and demand our rights as Nigerians.
Thank you so much, Soweto. That's what he has said concerning what happened here today and concerning what's going to happen tomorrow. Now, Ni Your Money is also here, and there are also people here whom he's going to speak with. Ni, please go ahead.
That is said, the repeat, we not a leader. We not a leader. I mean, that you said there. We have no leader. You understand?
Those scenes there are from Ojota, where the protesters are at, and that's the grounds that they've been allowed to protest at. And that was Bennett Akede speaking to Soweto. That's Hassan Soweto. He's a spokesperson for the Youth Rights Campaign, and he is also at the front lines there protesting. He said a couple of comments. Number one, he said that the police needs to do more, because they have seen time and time again thugs who seem to be sponsored by state actors, and they also, that's allegedly what he stated there, and they have tried to hijack the protests and harm them. He said the police are doing all they can but they are not doing enough. He also said that putting them to this grounds is not enough. They would like to exercise their right to assembly and free movement, which is their constitutional and legal right to be able to protest as they see fit, which is to march and picket as they want to. They also called on all Nigerians and every oppressed masses, as he put there, and quotation there, to come out and protest tomorrow, 7 a.m. Saturday morning. Now, we also try to get Niyo Money. We're going to get him, hopefully, when his audio is back on. But let me come to you, Mr. Okechukwu Nwanguma. You are the Executive Director, Rule of Law and Accountability Advocacy Center, RULAC. He made a statement, and I want to talk about the legal right of protesters and the legality of the government's action in just secluding them in specific locations. Now, they said the reason why they're in those locations is so this doesn't melt down to chaos and anarchy. But does that seem to be the case in the last 24 hours? Is this working?
Well, I'm happy to see that they are still able to come out today after all the harassment yesterday, because I'm aware that after the protest yesterday, some of the protesters who were on their way from Ojota going to their homes, somewhere around Oregu, some of them were attacked by police officers. One was injured and was hospitalized. Some of them were arrested and detained. I know that a few of them have been released. This is a further evidence that the state is focused on suppressing, on repression, rather than being responsive, rather than showing that they care about what the people are saying. Restricting them, and I mean, for them to even agree to, remain in the space shows how much they are determined to respect the law. But the state is not respecting the law. The state continues to, continues to sponsor thugs who try to attack these people. And I think that these things keep happening repeatedly and they are not responding to that. People have continued to point out this point about thugs being sponsored to attack, to harass these people. And the state is not responding. You heard about people who came out even before this protest to warn people not to protest. Those individuals are known. So why is it difficult for the state to call them to order? And why has the president not even come out? Because if they don't want this protest to continue, the president should come out to look at what happened in Kenya. Concessions were made. And until government makes some concessions. And this is why, because government lacks trust. People no longer trust government. So for even those who are saying they should stop and then give government time, how much time did government take to put in place all the policies, to all the actions they took that were all aimed at funding the personal pleasure of people in government, spending money to refurbish official quarters that a former vice president lived in, buying vehicles for members of the parliament. And these are vehicles, you know how much each of them costs. So these are things that people see. And when you tell them to be patient, government needs to show good faith. And I think that the failure by the president to come out to address Nigerians simply underscores or lends credence to the statement that the senator from what's his name, made about the president being caged, for which his colleagues tried to, came after him. Why is it difficult for the president to talk to Nigerians? The level of tension in this country shows, and the president's refusal to respond by coming out to speak, and even his spokesperson, the kind of utterances coming from them are further provocating the people. It shows that they don't care about the people. They care only about themselves. This same president, everything he said about President Jonathan when the issue of subsidy happened, have been played back to him. And he knows what he said. So it simply shows that people are hypocritical.
I must ask, are the legal rights of protesters, which is the freedom to move and the freedom to assemble, is it being violated?
I think so. It is because, you see, if you look at those court judgments that were given restricting people to particular spaces, they were obtained, those orders were obtained in the night before the day of the protest. So which meant that even those, and one of them was the one in Lagos, they said unknown persons. So how can an unknown person who is not a legal entity, so in Abuja you had them say we were not even served. We only read it in the pages of newspapers. Yet we decided to respect the law. Yet, you are still bringing people, and by the way, those other people that government are sponsoring to come, why are they also not restricting them to spaces? They were also moving freely without molestation and even being protected. Government officials were seen leading some of those in Abuja. Police provided them escorts. But the ones who are exercising their right to assemble peacefully and express themselves are being shot at, are being harangued, being tried to be, forced into a space.
Can I piggyback on that, talking about security and their mode of engagement when it comes to the protesters? There was 2 weeks' notice, at least 2 weeks' notice given before the protest actually started. There was plenty of time for security forces to perhaps maybe retrain, it would seem. We have samples from outside of the country where in these kinds of cases, there's specific kinds of equipment used to help with crowd control. Is it that we don't have them here in Nigeria? We saw a case from yesterday where there was an alleged shooting of a young man in, where was that again?
Kaduna.
In Kaduna, in front of the government house.
Yes.
How better could security forces actually engage the crowds, noting that these crowds could get quite exuberant? Are they allowed to use live ammunition in these kinds of circumstances?
So we have seen a lot of disproportionate use of force in trying to control crowds here. There are, in policing, public gatherings like this, there are levels of force that could be used. And that's what we talk about, proportionality in the use of force. Now, when you use a certain level of force that is not called for, that is not justified by the action you're responding to, that is disproportionate. For example, there was no need to have used, in my view, there was no need to have even used tear gas in many instances where they did. Because the reason was simply because security agencies wanted them to remain in those places that the so-called court orders had approved. Whereas people who came to counter them were freely moving and being, guided. The shooting in Niger State, where someone was hit on the head, a stray bullet, that person was not even part of the protest. So it shows you the recklessness in the use of weapons, and it also speaks to the level of how equipped the police are in terms of the tools they need to police this kind of situation. So in the absence of the appropriate tools, they use what they have, which is using live bullets in situations where they don't need to do that.
Well, I mean, so far so good. We've looked at this. Let me look at the demands for our protesters. It's very important that we put into context why our protesters are on the street. It's very, very important that we understand why Nigerians are protesting. Now, it is the hashtag 10 for 10 demands. I'm going to quickly list them before we go on a short break. Hunger, cost of living, insecurity, government waste, cost of governance, and a bloated NAS. There's also hashtag NSARS, which is to release all hashtag NSARS protesters, obey ECOWAS judgment, make public the hashtag NSARS judicial panel reports, and implement recommendation, including payment of compensation, protect farms and farmers as well. There's the human capital development, electoral reforms, establish a living wage, as well as constitutional and judicial reforms. Now, we're going to get into those conversations right here. This is the hashtag End Bad Governance protest coverage, live coverage since yesterday. Today is day 2, 2nd of August, 2024. You're watching News Central Television. We'll be back. Stay with us. And it's day 2 of the hashtag End Bad Governance. Across the nation, Nigerians are outside asking for an end to bad governance, an end to hunger, an end to corruption, and a new dawn that they want to see in their governance and in the country. My name is Judith Atibi, and of course Mazino is right here. Mazino Appeal is with me here today as we're bringing you the live coverage scattered across the nation. We also have with us Mr. Badegbo Vivo Rhodes Vivo. He is a member of Labour Party, as well as Mr. Okiki Adeniran, who is part of the civil society as well, and we've been having very in-depth analysis and conversation as it regards the legality of protesters, the legal rights of protesters, as well as the government. Now, we've been informed that we have our correspondent, Ni Omoni, live at Ojota. He is on standby and ready to speak with us to give us update from Ojota. Ni, well done so far on all of the hard work. Let us know what's the latest.
I don't know if you can hear me, Judith, but from last thing I caught you say you're asking for the update on what has been happening on the protest. I'll just start from the last comment someone just made behind me when he said Baba Oti Bawasoro, which means in English, Baba has not, the president has not spoken with us, and that's what some of them are waiting for. But I'll just let you speak with one of the protesters so that we can get our view. She was here yesterday, she's here today. How has the protest been for you so far?
So far, it's been peaceful. It's been well coordinated. The protesters are orderly. The security agency, I mean the police, they're also protecting the protesters, which is applaudable for them. And we're still agitating that we hope that the government, I mean the president, because I think he's the one I want to speak with, should please yield to the yearning of the people. Like the economic situation, it's not friendly, yeah, and that is why we are here. And we need him to, I mean, do an official address to us. Every citizen matters. Nobody wants to continue to stay on the streets, but life is no longer livable for people. The hiking price for electricity bill, the hiking price for petroleum, I mean fuel, I mean the hiking price for the common daily, you know, survival is quite expensive, and we cannot continue to cope with that. Something should be done, and we need it done as a matter of urgency. Like,
let me just harp on the fact of as a matter of urgency, because a lot of people are saying, oh, the protesters are already looking worn out. In the next 2 to 3 days, there's going to be a burnout, and they might not be coming here as they started from yesterday. The energy level might drop. What do you think about that?
No, I don't see the energy level dropping, but I don't want to disclose so many, yeah? The reason is the people are hungry, okay? An hungry man is an angry man. We are not tired. We are tired of the stethoscope. We are tired of the narrative they keep giving us like we are stupid. We are not stupid people. We are citizens. We are sensible. We want a state that is working. We understand the fact that economy is being affected by our way of protesting, but they can actually attend to us. If they can implement, you know, their welfare, they can implement buying private jets, implement allowances for senators and all that, like without consulting anybody. If they could implement national anthem, like changing our national anthem without even, you know, considering what is our opinion. It's like we don't matter until after 4 years. Look, we matter. We even if we are 10 of us remaining on the street, we will continue to to protest. Me, personally, yeah,
You'll continue to
I will continue to protest.
Okay, so let me just catch your view finally on this. You mentioned that as one of a major person and an organizer, you mentioned that your phone was hacked. Are there evidences to this, and how did you know that your phone was actually hacked?
Yesterday, after the protest, my phone was hacked. I'm not one of the organizers here,
okay,
but I'm an activist. Yes, okay, and I will remain an activist. When the government does right, I will say it. When they don't do right by the people, I will also talk about it, okay? I'm not a hater. I don't belong to any political party, and I'm not sponsored. Nobody sponsored me to come here. So yesterday, after the protest,
we seem to have lost connection there with Ni in Ojota, but we'll be bringing you more details about everything that's happening inside of there. But with our guests here, Mr. Okiki and Mr. Vivo, I have a very interesting question for you guys. The youth currently have Nigeria at a standstill. They have the ears of everybody in governance. That seems to be working. That, whatever you want to call it, it seems to be working. Now, how can they transcend from here where they are now regarding the governance on their knees just because of the youth, to actually making this count when it comes to being in office, when it comes to being voted for? Note I didn't say go out and vote. We recorded a bit of voter apathy when it comes to the youth in the last elections. Don't know if you saw that. However, there were no youths there, but you were there actually, to actually be voted for. How can they now transcend from where they are now to being the ones that are being voted for? Any suggestions, Bible?
To be honest, I feel it's a bit too early to talk about elections. That's just my honest feedback to that. I'm very concerned about this country right now, mainly because the government has spin propaganda for so long that it has started to believe its own propaganda. Now, you see, what we're seeing now with people coming out and youth coming out, and really it's every member of generations. I mean, I've seen videos of a father talking about how he has 3 children that he needs to feed. I've seen market women in their 50s, 60s talking about how things are expensive. So it's not even a youth thing. Maybe some of the people that have been interviewed are youth, but majorly different strata are out protesting hunger. Now, the problem here is that you have a situation where our current electoral system is deeply flawed. We have a situation where judiciary is suffering from a credibility crisis as well. And then you also have the government arm also suffering from a credibility crisis as well. If we talk about how youth can get into office or whether they can transition and all of that, it implies that you have a bunch of people that still have faith in these processes. Now, you see, when government is set up, it's set up in a situation to keep the populace calm. When government works, people have hope in the judiciary, people have hope in that the senators, the House of Rep members are going to voice their opinions and ensure that they work towards creating a better life for the people. When people no longer have faith in any of these systems, they start to take matters into their own hands. So you will find that a point will come where they no longer believe in electioneering. Then what will be the outcome of that, right? You see, this government currently runs itself as nothing can happen, right? Nothing, like there's no empathy. And when there's no empathy, it's a situation where they will only recognize power. And if they are the ones running a system that puts them in place, power is not going to recognize that. They're going to show another way to get the government to recognize them. Because now people are looking at the electoral, and I think I saw that as one of the things they're demanding, which is an independent review of all these monies that were spent on an electioneering system that was supposed to transmit results electronically that never did. Sure. There are no consequences to it.
But why isn't it the option of being a part of power there in the demands from the youth. That's I don't know if you agree with me, Mr. Okiki.
I understand, but you see,
it seems to be missing, which would be the one thing that could save most of the sufferings that we have.
Because
a representative.
Yes, because, well, the issue there is we're assuming that it's just by getting to a position that Nigeria will be better. And that's not the case here. Right now, for the next 2.5, 3 years, people have to eat. People are hungry. People have to be able to take care of their children. People are going to have to be able to afford to live. Now, that is an existential problem that Nigerians are dealing with today.
Here now.
Right? Right now. And if policy, so the government needs to adjust policy, adjust the way they spend our commonwealth, adjust the way they are borrowing money and spend it lavishly on themselves, then turn around and say the money that Nigerians have is only used to service debt. Service debt based on what are you doing? These monies you are borrowing, how is it impacting the common man? These are questions that must be addressed. These are things that must be shifted. Government must shift so that people can actually start to see the benefits of governance.
I want to come to you for a response on that one. Do you have faith in the youth? If they were to get into places of power, would we find ourselves here? And how come they haven't taken advantage of that if they have such a power as they do now?
I think it's more of a system problem than you know, whether it is youth or the old. You know, but I think there is an emerging youth, youth awakening, reawakening in this country, and this started with the NSAS, if you like, you know, because you remember that the NSAS was a youth-led movement, which started with NSAS, but along the line they transformed to End Bad Governance. This End Bad Governance is not new. It was part of the NSAS movement, and the government recognized that emerging movement, and that was why they went to Lekki tailgate and did what they did. They wanted to instill fear. They wanted to use that violence to quell that emerging force, you know. So that consciousness remained and also showed up during the last elections, where you see that for the first time, young people showed, you know, unusual interest in politics, in elections, which was why in Lagos State, you see government began to introduce ethnicity, religion, where even my brother here became an Igbo candidate, you know. So it was the level of desperation. So what they have done is they are afraid of that emerging youth movement. And so what has happened in this country is that there is a state capture. That state capture manifests in the fact that whereas there's supposed to be separation of powers, where if there was an effective and independent parliament, they could have called the president to order in some of the things that they are doing today, which are not right. But they have captured the judiciary, they have captured the parliament. And if you want to know an example of how this has happened, just a few weeks ago, for the first time in history, the parliament in one day, a bill from the president went for the first reading, second reading, and third reading in 27 hours passed to extend the time of the Inspector General of Police, who is supposed to retire in August 4. That was part of the calculation, not just for this protest, but also for 2017. They want to retain, they want to, you know, hold the police, the security in their grips. So what they have done is to capture all segments of government, the judiciary, the legislature, the executive wants to be in charge. So it is state capture, and this is why you see that the youth are the only, the youth remain the only force that can liberate this country. But it may not necessarily be by way of getting into politics, yes, but we have a lot of young people in government who have also disappointed us. Look at the governor of Kogi State.
Kogi State, yes.
Is it not scandalous? The level of corruption that, you know, happened under his government. It's a youth. So that is why I agree with him. It's not about demography, you know, it's about you know, the character and democratic, the level of you know, democratic consciousness, you know, political consciousness.
You're itching to say something.
I was going to say, and I thank you for that, and that's what I was trying to get to. It's not about youth being in office. It's the process that produces them.
Absolutely.
The process that they go through, right? If a process amplifies, I mean, you have a situation where there was a state assembly member that was caught repackaging COVID palliatives, right? Miss Macaulay or something, I think that's her name. And she's now been given another appointment as Secretary of the Social Trust Fund. This fund is supposed to be alleviating and helping Nigerians, right? So you have a situation where somebody has already been caught, diverting resources for the people, and they've almost been rewarded with a higher position where there's more resources that they can act to be used for the benefit of people. But is that going to happen? You have a situation where people that were supposed to be in charge of, what's this lady's name? Beta Edu.
Yeah.
You have that scandal as well. Someone is supposed to be trying to solve the multidimensional poverty problem we have in this country, but you see that money is only going to dimensions of their own personal account. You start to see that it's not just, and these are young people, right? These are young people. So it's not about age. We need a process that selects the best of us to lead the rest of us. A process that is credible.
So,
a process, and this process, we can only get it by stepping out of the line. Because if you stay in these lines that they've colored for us, that they've marked for us, it's just going to be more of the same, of the same, of the same. And then reality for Nigerians is only going to get worse. Because the more people can get away with, the more they will do. It's like a cancer. Corruption is like a cancer. It only gets worse and worse. You've heard when, I remember when they said a lion, a monkey swallowed money, then it turned to a rattlesnake swallowed money. Now termites are eating the entire documentation of how Nigerians spend billions. There's no evidence. And everybody's getting away with it. There are no consequences. So you see that people just become more daring and more daring. So I think that when people can come out and ask the government that you need to answer to these things, and then it's on the government to now respond. And democracy is supposed to be a two-way street.
I'm glad you're saying this, because the protesters are doing exactly just that, isn't it? I mean, protest really is dissent. It's coming out and asking, you know, you have to be accountable. You are accountable. Speak to us.
Yes.
We want to see change.
Yes.
Since you're not doing it, we're out here asking for change. And so it begs to ask the question about our democracy and our governance. Is it for the people then?
When the president comes out to say that there's no cabal, it's his money that he used to get into office, you see, and again, it goes back to the process by which somebody comes in. If you, as a politician, get into office because the people put you there, you know you could not buy all these votes. People voted for you. Once these same people start talking about their hunger, you get jittery. You want to solve that problem as soon as you can. But if you're a politician that gets into office by manipulation and rigging and using money to find your way into office, you notice that their approach to these problems are completely different. Because they do not believe that the votes put them there. They are callous with their statements. There's a lot of arrogance that you see in their statements. And so in that kind of process, you cannot say that that has produced a government for the people. A government for the people is reacting to the people in their interest and responding in a quick and measured way, not just constantly trying to spin propaganda and put the people down. But you are hungry, this is how we are going to solve this problem. Short term, medium term, long term. That's the kind of responsiveness I should be seeing from government. But that will only happen if the government believes that we're put there by the people.
Wait, but what is this fear that the government has? I've never seen in my entirety as a journalist, I must say this, I have never seen the populace ask for a resignation of any of their councillors, of a local government chairman, of a senator, or a member of the House of Rep, or the vice president, or the president, or even the police force lieutenant. I have never seen anyone ask for a chopping block, even though we have seen, or ask their head on a chopping block, even though we have seen the most vile, the most statements that would have you questioning your sanity as a human being, termites ate the document, a snake swallowed the money. You know, you are asking for an inquest and query, and they are all of a sudden falling on the table, unable to talk. Turn off your mic, or get off your... that's enough. That's
You're almost as dramatic as they are.
I have to be as dramatic. But yet, there is this fear when Nigerians choose to stand up and say enough is enough. Where does that fear stem from? Because we're not asking you they're not asking for you to leave your job. They just ask you to do your job. So where is why are they afraid?
I feel that fundamentally the issue is that we do not have servant leaders. We have people that come into office to be lords over us. Now, when you're asking them to work for you, it's a problem. They did not come into office to work for you. They came into office for their own interest, for the interest of the people around them and their family. And this, I know that it might sound funny, but when you really put it down on the table, that's what it is. Because if genuinely, like you said, do your job, secure lives and property, ensure that there is a quality environment for people to be able to do business and transact and eat and feed and thrive. Right? When people are only asking for that, like you said, this is not the French Revolution where people are saying off with your head and retire. Nobody has even said, I've not heard anybody call for resignation of anybody. They're simply saying we are hungry. Solve this problem. Come up with policy. And the issue, again, like I said, the process by which you come in is going to reflect how you handle your constituents and your people. And that's what we are seeing. Right? That's simply it.
So after 2 days of the protest, I actually want to come to you, Mr. Okiki, regarding our scorecard. But before we do that, I also wanted to ask where all the international influence that it seemed the government was pandering to have gone. Because at the start, we are made to understand that these visits that the president made was to make Nigeria attractive and all of that. And the policies were also supposed to try and help us get these attractive deals with foreign influence of foreign organizations or even foreign countries. Did that not work in any case to try help Nigeria get out of the doldrums where it found itself? Did it drive us in deeper? Was it a bad approach, pandering to these interests instead of the interests of the people of Nigeria itself?
If your house stinks, it's not hospitable. No matter how much you go around the entire Lagos, telling people to come and live in your house, right? People are not going to come. It's not, you must first do the work and then advertise the work that you have done. You cannot just say, you know there's a mess. You've not solved that problem and you think by traveling is going to get investment to come in. Yes, you might get quick capital, you might get hot cash, but that money does not come in to develop. That money comes in to solve a temporary problem, and at any little slight inconvenience, that money goes out. So it does not even allow for a stability of your currency situation. I mean, there was a time where they were saying the naira to the dollar is going for, it came down to almost 900 naira. Now it's back to 1,600. It was a glimmer of hope, but it's not, because the solution was not a deep, it was not a solution that solved structural problems. It was a quick fix, very surface situation, and it's not sustainable, right? So until you solve those deeper problems, I said to you, like for instance, signaling. If the entire government came and said, listen, this is a financial situation we find ourselves in, the entire government, all arms of government are only going to patronize made in Nigeria cars, right? You might look at that money and say it's not in its entirety, it's not as significant, but you have sent a signal that you believe in manufacturers in Nigeria, you are going to encourage manufacturing in Nigeria, and you're going to focus on production in Nigeria. That in itself instills hope. These are structural things, right? That you can look at and say, okay, this is the direction this country is going to go, so I'm going to bet on this country.
Mr. Okiki, what do you think about this, the absence of the international interest all of a sudden?
Well, you know, when the president was campaigning, there were two things he kept repeating. One of which was that it was his turn. The other one was that he was going to continue from where, you know, his predecessor continued. But we often hear him say that he inherited a lot of baggage, mess, you know. And he's not addressing that mess. He's not working towards, cleaning the audience table. Now, why is it difficult? And by the way, look at the people he has populated his cabinet with. These are his helmsmen. Look at, whereas he's talking about cutting down the cost of government, he's expanding the number of ministries, he's creating more jobs for his lieutenants. He's more bent on, and by the way, you know that he came in with a huge credibility crisis. Legitimacy. Any government that lacks legitimacy has a problem to govern, because you need the trust and support of the people to succeed. He doesn't have popular support. And this is why, even in setting up the National Assembly, you saw how he worked hard to make sure that all those who will head the National Assembly were his own men. That is why the Senate President could wake up and say, whatever the President asks, we will give him. At a time, look at even the issue of minimum wage. So compare, and this is why people are saying, can we even put these people on minimum wage so that they feel what the average worker is feeling? Look at how happy they are going home with the amount of money that they go home with in a month, which for each legislator, the money they take home in a month can pay the salaries of thousands of workers in a year. And so they don't care about the people. It's all about themselves. It is my turn. And he's taking his turn and the turn of the people, who are his, henchmen, which is why he does not care about talking to Nigerians, because he doesn't care about Nigerians. He cares more about his pocket and the pocket of people, his friends in government.
Mr. Gbadebo, you are a member of the Labour Party. And I have to ask you, piggybacking off what Mr. Okechukwu just spoke about, and that is opposition. With this administration, in the last 1 year, we have seen a dwindling in the voices of opposition and in the voices of those who are calling for accountability. And by opposition, I mean other political parties who should be speaking and, calling opposition. We've also seen on the ground, on the ground of the assembly, where members of opposition party have spoken against certain, move and law, especially when it came to the passing of the bill for the new/old anthem into law to now make it the current anthem that we have, Nigeria We Hail Thee. And so we've seen things like this. What is your take on this dwindling case of opposition and just what he said, where we see the Senate President making statements affirming the decisions of the President, so much so that there is no, or they seem to not be, checks and balances?
I'm in complete agreement with you. It's the opposition play that I expected to see, or I hope to see, with the kind of elections that we had, which is one that produced a president, one of the lowest majorities in our political history. And you had strong amount of votes from PDP and Labour Party. One would have expected to see people that would stay on that and ensure that they create that renaissance. But when a system is not functioning the way it's supposed to be, when a Senate president is supposed to be the group of people that put the presidency in check, automatically just gives the president a carte blanche, you can tell that this entire system, this way it's been set up, is not working. It's completely compromised. So I'm very disappointed with the level of opposition that we see, especially in the Senate and in the House of Rep. I feel that they should be doing a lot more. I mean, you look at the kind of quality of opposition that we had, or quality of governance that we had when Senator Bukola Saraki was Senate President. And I mean, Nigeria would have been on a much faster downward spiral under President Buhari if you did not have a Senate President like Bukola Saraki with that sort of checks and balances, right? It is not right for a Senate to just completely just take off their hat and bow for the presidency. yes, we want policies that will move forward, but we also want accountability, we want transparency, we want to ensure that, you know, the deals, that the way you're spending our Commonwealth is being spent positively. I mean, with all the hunger in the land, you want to do a coastal road. Yes, it's important. But what bidding process did you go through to arrive at the amount of money that you've put towards this coastal road? Could that money have been better spent? Could we have gotten another construction company that would have done it for cheaper? Could that, the remaining of that money, could that have been put into securing our farms, ensuring that we have more logistic vehicles that can bring in food from the farms? I mean, you see a government that ought to do more, and this is where I expect opposition, because they are in office. They are supposed to come out as that minority report and say, listen, we believe that such and such money should be used in a better way.
We saw Ireti, who is also a member of it. She's been doing the best that she can. Yes. But we've also seen how her clash, I don't want to call it a clash, but we've seen the frictions, there we go, between herself and the Minister of the FCT, Nyesom Wike. It's been a tit for tat, you know, this comment against that comment. And she said she's not been carried along with certain infrastructure that's been going on in the state. There's a lot tit for tat and friction that's going on there. As an outsider looking in, I don't want to bring out Labour Party, so bear with me, Badebo. But Mr. Okechukwu, seeing that, just looking at that from a CSO standpoint, what do you make of it?
You know, first of all, let me add to what my brother just said about, you know, the quality of opposition we have. You know, the president took his time to handpick and determine who became the Senate president. You know, because if you look at the Senate president, before the elections, he was supposed to be answering questions before the EFCC because of humongous allegations of corruption, you know. So one way, it's actually a tactic to have a man with such a baggage as Senate president. So knowing that he has a baggage, he's going to be very humble. So I think it was a deliberate strategy that the president, you know, in selecting people with question marks as leaders of the parliament, so that they are beholden to him. Coming to Ireti, you know, I had the Wike say that he's now in charge in the FCT. Let her come and win election. So that level of lunatic confidence, and who tells Wike that if he's going to vote, he only has one vote. But that tells you the level of confidence they have about how they have been able to cage this country. So they see the woman as a potential voice of, you know, reason, and so they want to silence her. And you see that rather than protect her, the Senate president is siding with Wike. The same thing he did to the female senator from Kogi State, telling her about we not being in a club. All those kinds of.
Well, Mr. Okechukwu, Mr. Vival, it's past 4 o'clock. It's the end of day 2 for protests, and we're going to go on a short break, but when we get back, I'd like us to take a look at a scorecard for the protests so far. What have the youths done right? What have they done wrong? What has the government done right? What have they done wrong? So let's go on a quick break. When we get back, we'll still have our guests in here discussing with us, well, processes that have been happening since yesterday, the start of the End Bad Governance protests here in Nigeria. Stay with us. We'll be back. Welcome back. It's still the middle of the End Bad Governance coverage here on News Central, as we've been bringing you detailed reports about everything happening across the country and here in Lagos as well. And we also have had guests in the studio with us. They still are with us, but only this time we're going to be dovetailing into another little segment and that's for Market Pulse.
Yes, indeed. We have David Olujimi on standby. Market Pulse is in collaboration with Naira Metrics, and we have David Olujimi who will be giving us a bit more insight on the financial market, or rather the NGX. David Olujimi is a financial market analyst with Naira Metrics. Now, David, first of all, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Now, MTN Nigeria historically guaranteed profit marker ranked in significant losses for Q2, and that's the second quarter of 2024. What had the CEO explained that if not for FX losses, the telco would have recorded sizable amount of profit. Now, just how much pressure has devaluation of the Naira placed on MTN's balance sheet, and how have we seen them mitigate their FX exposure?
So a company like MTN is one of the companies that has a very high rate of FX exposures in Nigeria, considering the fact that their tower leases are usually held by is presently held by an American company. It was formerly held by IHS Towers. So most of their operations, what we see them just give us their telecom services, but a lot of their network costs, their network operating cost is usually in dollars, usually in USD. So from last year, we saw MTN make losses of about 700 billion based on this FX devaluation. This year, we've seen them make losses of up to 500 billion in the first half of the year. So it's a lot. What they've been doing to mitigate the cost, I don't think they have much of an option, except they want to stop operating. Many of the things they have to, many of the network operating costs have to be, except we have tower companies like ATC or IHS that are based in Nigeria, but I don't think we've come to that level of technological advancement yet.
Okay, Olujimi, I've got a question for you now. Big spenders, MTN. However, they do spend a lot when it comes to their operational cost. I think 137% operating cost, if I'm not mistaken. Now, this cost, do you see this cost being transferred to customers? And if it's transferred to customers, do you think the customers for MTN will actually they'd be able to withstand these costs? Would they stay, or would this cost them in the end? What do you think?
So, for years, MTN has been one of the companies that has been clamoring for an increase in tariff. We've seen power sector tariff hikes. We've seen petrol subsidy. MTN this year was very, very loud about the fact that the NCC needs to permit them to hike their tariffs. So if you notice, MTN has been operating on 4 naira for an SMS for as long as I can remember, because I'm still quite young. They've been operating on this particular tariff system for quite a while. They've racked up a lot of profit when things were not this bad. But now they're at the point where they feel like they need to, but the NCC is saying they need to wait. I think there's a particular review that's been going on over the past year about the tariff system in the telecom sector. And the NCC has given them an instruction that they need to wait in order to, before they can say, oh, they want to proceed with a tariff hike. If MTN wants to pass this cost over to consumers, we are going to definitely see hike in the amount of money we pay for calls, for messaging, for data, and it's going to impact negatively on Nigerian users, and it's probably going to affect that sector in itself.
What about their stocks? The stocks dropped 24% year-to-date. How does this impact the shareholders?
It's not been palatable. It's not been palatable for MTN shareholders because 24% from January till date is about, I think now is about 25% plus in year-to-date losses, because people have been dumping MTN stocks. A company that was, like you said initially, historically a dividend payer. Now they're at a point where their retained losses, accumulated losses, as at H1 2024, is about 507 billion naira. That is quite a lot. So we don't see them, the way I see it, I don't know the plans they have, I don't know what strategies they are putting in place, but if they are going to have to pay dividends, they may have to reduce their retained loss, accumulated losses a bit. But for now, they are still on they've probably just tracked back a little. but network operating cost has still been, their operating profit from H1 2024 compared to H1 2023 was a massive drop. So I'm not even sure that they are still I'm not sure that they are on track to become profit making just yet. So we'll probably see MTN run 2 years of losses. Then maybe in 2025 we'll see them bounce back. And how it has affected shareholders is that when you own shares when you have shares with no return on dividends, with no dividends return, it's not sweet. It's not sweet to hold such shares. And you have a share where they're already in negative equity region, meaning that their liabilities already exceed their assets, already exceed the equities of the company, already exceed their assets. It's not palatable for shareholders of the company right now. And I really hope that something drastic happens for that company.
And another telco that seems to be having issues as well as Airtel when it comes to the FX scare that we have and the devaluation of the Naira. The contribution to the group's revenue has declined significantly when it comes to dollar terms. So how can Nigeria subsidiaries of foreign-based companies, and in this case telcos, be able to recuperate or even better yet, mitigate the impact of FX on their balance sheets? One thing with telcos is that, like I said initially about these telcos, the network operation, the way they operate their networks is such that they incur a lot of cost that is denominated in USD because they have to pay international companies. For example, Airtel uses IHS, MTN uses ATC, two American companies that are tower operators, and they have to pay these guys to manage their sites, and it's except you want to stop operating. So it's a non-ending cost that goes on year after year. For Airtel, the thing with Airtel is that Airtel Africa is a big group that consists of 14 countries, consists of Airtel's operation in 14 countries, Airtel Nigeria being one of them. Normally, Airtel Nigeria is the largest contributor to their revenue, but now we've seen Airtel Nigeria drop below Airtel East Africa and Airtel Southern Africa. One way we can say that Nigerian subsidiaries can mitigate their FX exposures is probably when we become a less import-dependent economy. For example, the manufacturing companies can try to look for import substitution strategies. They can look for things that they can get within Nigeria, but it's not what this thing I'm talking about is not a short-term thing. The only thing we can see right now, the only thing that I can say can help them right now is having a stable FX policy, having a stable foreign exchange policy, such that they already cap their spending on. Last year was a lot. When you already credited accounts with, may say, 300 billion to facilitate 300 million to facilitate $1 billion worth of imports, and all of a sudden the naira goes up to 1,000 naira to $1. That is a big blow to your books. Then it did not stop at 1,000. It went in H1 and went to 1,008, further blowing the books, blowing some of them out of the. In fact, some of them have had to settle for receiving stipends from their foreign parent companies. Some of these companies like Nigerian breweries having to receive help from Heineken, the national breweries having to receive from AB InBev. It got to a point now. Guinness, Diageo says, "Oh, I don't think we can do this anymore," and they say, "Okay, let's sell it to a Nigerian group, a Nigerian group that is willing to acquire it." One thing that they can do, it's not in their power, it's not in their place. What we can just do in Nigeria right now is help these companies attain with a stable FX regime. We see the naira dipping little by little. I'm very hopeful that the CBN can take steps to bring it back on track. We need naira at a stable place, at least for a year, so that these companies can breathe. Now, we're pressed for time, so I have to ask you about, the debt for Airtel as well. Airtel has somehow been able to bring 86% of their debt to be dominated in local currency. So I have to ask you, how have they been able to pull that off, you know? And what's your assessment of this year's strategy? Should a country do the same when it comes to that?
So the thing with Airtel is that when you look at their books, we are looking at Airtel Africa's books. So what they said in their books is that 86% of the debt in Airtel Africa is not denominated in local currencies across Africa. Because in their financial year that ended March 2024, we see that the company they were affected by the Naira devaluation and by devaluation of the Malawian kwacha. Those are the two currencies that affected their books in a way. But now, I think they are taking steps to ensure that whatever liabilities they incur does not go beyond their country. They are going through the processes of raising local debt. They are going through the process of raising local bonds, rather. They just repaid a 500 million bond in May of this year. So the steps they are taking is more channeled to the countries of their operation, essentially. So Airtel Nigeria is taking steps that are more pertinent to Airtel Nigeria, Airtel Kenya, Airtel Rwanda, Airtel Malawi, and Airtel Zimbabwe, all of them trying to take steps that will favor them. I think they are putting in the company one is listed on the London Stock Exchange, so they have to, and they have a lot of foreign shareholders. They have more foreign shareholders than African shareholders. So it's wiser for them to put in cost management strategies that would stop them from incurring unnecessary losses that can be incurred just by operating in Africa. So the steps that Airtel Africa has taken, it's almost, I would say it's not so different from Airtel Nigeria, because Airtel Nigeria is just a part of them, and they are not really, Airtel Nigeria is not like a limited, it's just a branch, it's just like an arm of the entire group, Airtel Africa. For Nigeria's case, for the entire country, Nigeria, is it possible that we have more of our debt denominated in the local currency? I think that's what we have already. This government and previous government have been doing more to do that.
Well, David Olujimi, thank you very much for being a part of the show, even if this is Market Pulse inside of our End Bad Governance coverage. Thank you very much, David.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Now, we are going to go on a scorecard now to find out exactly what has been done right or wrong when it comes to the protests since yesterday. We still have our guests inside the studio here with us. Let's take a quick break, and when we get back, it's that scorecard.
And you're welcome back. You're watching the hashtag End Bad Governance for live coverage right here on News Central Television. My name is Judith Atibi. Of course, Mazino Appeal is right next to me on my left-hand side. We also have two guests here in our studio, a panel of gentlemen who've been giving us conversations for the last hour. They've been giving their takes and their opinions on the matter as protesters continue to protest across the nation. To my right here is Mr. Okechukwu Nwogugu. He is Nwogumba, I beg your pardon. He's part of a CSO and also a member of Labour Party, Mr. Gbadebo Rhodes Vival. Gentlemen, before the break, we were saying that we needed your take on this. What would be your scorecard? If I was to pass you a report sheet to score the protesters and the security agencies, plus the government, and how this has panned out in the over 24 hours it started, what would it be? Let me start from you.
Well, I would give the protesters 10 over 10. I feel they've been, especially in Lagos State, they've been very lawful. They've gathered and, focused on the issue. They've not allowed for any sort of vandalism or things of that nature. I also rate the security agencies significantly high. Maybe we look at the 7 or an 8. So far, even people that you interviewed have said that security has sort of protected them to a certain extent. I mean, they can do a lot more. I think that things have been kind of calm in Lagos because the protesters themselves have sort of worked with the security agencies, at least in Lagos State, right? But what I'm really worried about is the thugs that we've seen coming around and how they've not been apprehended by the security forces just yet. We don't want a situation where they wait for a clash to happen before they step up to that. And for the government, I'll have to give them 1 or 2 over 10, because the fact of the matter is they had notice, they had enough notice. And if they planned to address the issues as opposed to spinning propaganda, creating, you know, using ethnic baiting, tribalism to sort of divide and conquer or take the energy out of the protest, if they actually focused on what the people, all Nigerians coming together, united, saying, we are hungry, Nigeria is not working. If they focused on that, they had a whole month to actually prepare a response, to show policy, to show how they're understanding and show empathy of what Nigerians are dealing with. And up to today, the president has not even spoken to the people.
Do you think that's some sort of strategy on his part?
I think it's just a reflection of the arrogance of power. Because even those that are speaking, like Dapo Abiodun saying that Nigerians are sore losers, right? Or Akpabio saying that they are going to eat, let the people go to protest. It's just a reflection of the spirit that's within this government, which is not one of servant leadership, but one of lording over a people. And so far, their stewardship is leaving a lot to be desired, and it's very appalling.
Mr. Okechukwu, the protesters, the security agents, the government, what's your scorecard?
Yeah, the protesters set out to carry out a peaceful protest to communicate to government their discontent and the discontent of Nigerians generally with the level of poor governance, the level of economic hardship and suffering that Nigerians are going through. And for the past two days, we have seen them do what they promised. They have been peaceful in their conduct, but they have also complained about attempts to provoke them, you know, by trying to infiltrate their ranks, but they have remained, you know, consistent in maintaining the peace. Security agents have, to a large extent, you know, been professional in managing the policing of, you know, public order. But of course, there have been some exhibition of overzealousness by some of them trying to, you know, get into arguments with some of these protesters. And I think that they have not been fair in their treatment of the peaceful protesters and those that government have been sponsoring to infiltrate. The government has maintained a stance of arrogance and insensitivity, you know, by their utterances, by their refusal to talk to Nigerians, by their failure to recognize, even though they acknowledge that freedom of expression, freedom of assembly and expression are constitutionally guaranteed rights of Nigerians, and that they are not separable from democracy. But they must live it out. The president should demonstrate leadership. He should demonstrate responsible leadership by coming out to talk to Nigerians and to begin to address the concerns that Nigerians have raised. These are genuine concerns, and if they are not addressed, even if this protest ends, there's no guarantee that there will be peace in this country, and that without peace, there will be no development.
Interesting
Mr. Okechukwu, we want to say thank you so much. Mr. Okechukwu Nwanguma, he's Executive Director, Rule of Law and Accountability Advocacy Center, RULAC, and also Mr. Gbadebo Rhodes Vival is a member, Labour Party, and also the former gubernatorial candidate for Lagos State for also Labour Party. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Fantastic conversation with you guys. Appreciate it. We're looking forward to having you guys back again, especially you on Sunday for Breakfast Extra. Have to plug it in there.
Of course you do. We're going on a short break. When we come back, there is more. And this time, entertainment. Where are the superstars and Afro-pop stars, and why are they not following the footsteps of the legendary Fela Aníkúlápó Kuti? We'll talk about this more after this break. Stay with us. It's day 2. Nigeria has been rocked by nationwide protests over bad governance, and some entertainers and popular celebrities have raised their voices. Others have chosen to remain silent. We're reminded that democracy gives us free will to protest, to do it peacefully, but also respects a free will not to protest. Now, the big question is why celebrities and popular names wouldn't want to use their big platform and large fan base to sensitize the people and advocate for better governance in these tough times. And so we took out a break and we decided to go out and ask a question. And here's what Nigerian celebrities are reacting, or here's how they are reacting to the protest. Take a look.
Following the start of the #EndBadGovernance nationwide protest ongoing in Nigeria, there have unfortunately been reports of clashes between police and local miscreants in multiple states, including Abuja, Lagos, Kano, Borno, and other states. The protest has become the #1 subject of discussion across social media, and some influential Nigerians have also weighed in on the trending topic. Nollywood actress Regina Daniels posted a video on Instagram calling for peace during the protest. She added, once violence gets involved, it defeats the whole purpose of the protest. She appeals to everyone to try and make this protest as peaceful as possible.
I urge everyone to try and make this protest as peaceful as possible, so that the voice of the masses will be heard and actions will be taken on it.
Nigerian singer Omale showed his support for the cause on X by posting "End Bad Governance in Nigeria" in solidarity of the ongoing protest. Actress Iyabo Ojo took to Instagram on August 1st, 2024 to condemn the act of violence. In a series of posts showing the violence that erupted, she called on President Tinubu and the police to allow the protesters move peacefully. She also made another post urging her followers to protest peacefully as well. Actress and politician Tonto Dike posted a press statement on her Instagram page calling for peaceful coexistence, peaceful protest, and dialogue. While Nollywood actress Kate Henshaw took to X during the protest to encourage her fellow citizens. She wrote, "This is the highest office in the land, but one person says he wants to eat and chop on the heads of the people. Crass and utterly despicable utterance." Also, Grammy Award winner Tems has publicly expressed her solidarity with Nigerians by postponing the release of her highly anticipated music video for Burning. This decision comes in response to the ongoing nationwide protest and the growing demand for social change within the country. In a heartfelt statement, Tems emphasized the importance of standing with her fellow citizens during these challenging times. She acknowledged the struggles and frustration faced by many Nigerians and felt that releasing the video at this time would be inappropriate. She also aligns herself with the voices calling for change. While, on the other hand, artists like Burna Boy is still being dragged on social media following his recent comment concerning the ongoing protest, where he stated that he wasn't going to get involved because the last time he did, he was still being called out for trying. A lot of social media followers reacted, calling him out again to use his platform to express the current pain Nigerians are feeling instead of playing the mute card. Some even called him out for collecting gifts from politicians currently in service, which he has come out to clearly deny.
Oh, you're watching that report there was for entertainment. It's a very dire question that's been asked. While some have shown support and solidarity with protesters, others have also chosen to remove themselves from the equation altogether. And so the question is, will they come out and protest? Will they not? Well, reactions have been following on social media following the African giant Burna Boy, where he said he will not be protesting as well. Well, when we come back, there is more conversation in these right here after this break. Stay with us.